Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora has got to be one of the most intriguing games I can think of in recent memory. Not necessarily because graphically it looks really good or because thematically it seems to just be Far Cry reskinned, but rather because it's a tie-in with one of the biggest movie franchises in human history, and it's coming from a studio that is now being tasked with some of the biggest licensed games in recent memory. I mean, these guys that are developing this game are not only doing this project, but they're also doing Star Wars Outlaws, which I just did a video on earlier last week. So today I thought it would be interesting to deep dive a little bit more into this game and see what we actually know about it, if there is good reason to be really hyped or excited for it, or if this is a game that you should hold off on pre-ordering and getting excited for. As always in these Skeptical Look videos, my goal is not to just beat down on you for being excited about something, but rather to look at whether or not that excitement and even hype is justified, even though I think generally hype makes you stupid. All that skepticism really means is that you're not convinced of a proposition until there's adequate evidence justifying acceptance of that position. In this case, is there good reason to be excited for Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora other than it looks kind of pretty? Is there some meat on this bone? In this video, we're gonna deep dive and find out. As always, if you enjoy the video, make sure to like, you know what, this is stupid. I hate it when YouTubers take like a big chunk of the video to beg you to like and subscribe, so I'm not gonna do it. You know what, don't subscribe, let's just watch the stuff. Now, as a concept, this game I don't think is off to a bad start. It's a massive open world game where you are playing as a Na'vi and you are going through exploring all sorts of levels, fighting against the humans who are screwing everything up with their industrialization. It's basically Dancing with Smurfs, but in an open world game. And that to me is not necessarily a bad idea. It seems like that could make for a decent video game. Maybe not one that's going to win any sort of crazy narrative awards, but it could lead to just blind dumb fun like the sequences that you're seeing on screen right now. However, you usually need a little bit more meat on the bone to an idea other than just, oh, a big open world that's shiny to sell copies of games and to get good reviews. Forspoken. So my main question is, what is the gameplay loop actually like? When you sit down to play Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, what are you gonna be doing from hour to hour, mission to mission? Well, we got a gameplay deep dive, and I encourage you to go check it out yourself in its full entire length. I'll have it linked in the description box below for after you finish watching this video. But in general, the Far Cry comparisons seem pretty fair. As far as we can tell, there's going to be a pretty expansive narrative. It's built to support co-op play if you're interested in that, just like Far Cry 6 did more recently. And while it features a big open world that you can fly through and explore to your heart's content, it seems to be in structure pretty much Far Cry, but with really tall, skinny Smurfs. Speaking of the open world, it's also featuring the newest version of Ubisoft's Snowdrop engine, and you can tell, I mean, this thing looks like they really cranked some dials and made it look really, really good. I mean, this has got to be one of the best looking open world games that we've seen recently, so props to Ubisoft. That's great to see. And while we haven't gotten any extended looks at missions, for example, with whole missions or story quests given to us to see kind of how they work, there's only so much you can do. I mean, I'm sure a lot of these missions just come down to sneak into this encampment and then kill these people, fight this mini boss in a mech and move on to this objective and clear that. It's going to be a typical FPS, and I'm not necessarily against that. I mean, the reason FPSs are really common is because they're really popular. So I'm not inherently opposed to the idea, but I would hope that they introduce some really unique ideas that separates this game from all of those other generic first-person shooters. One of the ways they seem to be doing this is by introducing all of this Na'vi weaponry in addition to the more human weaponry and guns that you'll be able to use as you go through levels and acquire different items. Like you can see here where you have a regular rifle that you can use, but then in other missions and sequences you can swap to different bows or Na'vi materials and tools. They also showed this sequence where you're actually flying and standing shooting explosive arrows at these little ROVs. That's pretty cool. Or I guess they're not ROVs because there's humans in them. They're just like ships and flying ships, but the smaller one looked like an ROV. So I don't know. Don't come at me in the comments. One of the other things they mentioned is that there's going to be a lot of item collection, as you would expect from a Ubisoft game. There's going to be crafting of different weapons and materials or food that can be used to give you temporary boosts or buffs. Again, pretty in line with what we've seen with a lot of other open world action shooters and action adventure games. But again, the reason why systems like these are really popular in games like these is because they're popular. It's because people enjoy them. So I'm not one of these people that's gonna like bash on the game for being a first person shooter because it's a first person shooter and that's it. Like, it's okay. The reason there's so many of these is because people like them. But really here, the star of the show really seems to be the open world that you're going to be exploring. The variability of environments seems crazy, crazy high. And just in this short sequence of clips that you're seeing on screen now, it's wild, the diversity of plant life and lighting and animals that you're going to encounter while going through this game. So I am very much intrigued by that. I would dare say that I'm excited to explore a digital recreation of this world. It seems like they've done a pretty good job. But who is they? Who's making this game? Well, it's being published by Ubisoft, but to be more specific, the studio that's developing it is Ubisoft Massive, or Massive Entertainment, a Ubisoft company is what they're titled now. Massive Entertainment is actually primarily known for their work on the Division series. They made the Division 1, the Division 2, and after that they went silent for a few years. And what they've been working on is Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, since it was announced in early 2017, and also Star Wars Outlaws. Both of these are massive projects. I guess that's a pun. I didn't mean to say that at all. That was an accident. Yeah, they're massive projects with massive passion. But no, these are huge projects that justify a lot of expense and effort, and also they are licensed. And I don't think we should just blow past that. Licenses are expensive. For Ubisoft to pay the money to get the rights to make a Star Wars game and to get the rights to make an Avatar game, that's expensive. And you're not gonna just risk throwing all of that money away by throwing it to a studio you don't think is capable. And in fact, there's actually reports that James Cameron met with Massive Entertainment executives years ago, back in 2016-17, when discussing this project, and decided to give them the rights to work on this game instead of all of the other studios that were begging for it, simply because he was convinced that they would do the best job. And I think that is worth something, because James Cameron does what James Cameron does because he's James Cameron, and we all know whatever James Cameron does is probably going to be pretty good because he's James Cameron.
James Cameron doesn't do what James Cameron does for James Cameron.
And other projects they've worked on, Just Dance Now. I mean, come on, what more do you need? What more do you need to hear? But they also helped with Far Cry 3 and Assassin's Creed Revelations. These guys have been around for a while. Furthermore, Ubisoft has seemingly grown this team a lot. They were just a couple of hundred people a handful of years ago, and now they've ballooned up to 600 plus employees, as many as 800 employees by some estimates that I've come across. The point is, it's a big team, and Ubisoft is pouring a lot of money into them, so they seem to believe in the staff and the capacity for them to do really good work. Now, I did not play the Division 1 or 2, but I do have friends like my good buddy Caleb, who has thousands of hours in those games, and he cannot speak highly enough about what their team is able to do. It's apparently a very capable group. However, it's very important to note, I feel, that this studio has not done a project like this before. The Division 1 and the Division 2 are big games in their own right, but they're online cover-based co-op shooters. They are nothing like this new Star Wars game, which is a third-person action-adventure title with a lot of narrative focus, and Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora is also totally different with a focus on massive open-world exploration. These are very different genres of games, and it's not easy to just swap between them. We've seen other studios try to dip their toes into, say, multiplayer games when they're primarily known for single-player games. And again, we all know how that typically ends the first time they try it. So it's not to say that it's impossible that they pull this off, but it's gonna be difficult. And a lot of the time when a studio tries something totally different for the first time, there are some growing pains and some experiential lackings, okay? Like, they can hire developers, they can hire directors who maybe have worked on Assassin's Creed Odyssey, bring those guys over to Ubisoft Massive and have them help with the design of the open world. They can do stuff like that, but it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tricky. So for me, honestly, consideration of the studio is sort of a wash. I think they are a very capable team, and Ubisoft and James Cameron seem very confident in their abilities, but we have not seen them take on a project like this before, and maybe they hit it out of the park and instantly are flung into the stratosphere, and we all begin to consider them in the same ranks as like Rockstar when it comes to open world design. Or maybe they just make another typical Ubisoft open world game, collectathon, whatever. I'm not sure. I have not played the game, but I'm very interested. And at this point, I don't think there's enough information to come to a conclusion one way or the other. So for me, this is sort of a wash. I don't think you're justified in getting excited or dismissing this game simply because of the studio. But all this does bring me to perhaps the biggest negative that this game is dealing with, which is that it's coming from Ubisoft. Ubisoft has not had a great last 15 years to be generous. Like, they've released a lot of really crappy games, a lot of mediocre games, and a handful of games that were pretty good, though not stunning and amazing. So I do think it is fair to wonder whether or not this game is just a Ubisoft cash grab, where they're going to throw together a sort of lazy open world, a ton of collectibles, and then get the cash out because it's an Avatar game and they're hoping that that name will carry it across the finish line. I think it's fair to wonder that because Ubisoft has disappointed us so many times. And when we look at the store pages for this game, you can see that already the Ubisoft stank is all over this thing, especially when you look at the pricing. There are a ton of add-ons and DLC basically already available for the game before it's launched. And if we go down to the different versions, look at this. This is one of the most aggressive pricings for a game like this that I've seen in a very, very long time, possibly ever. The base game is $70. Okay, that's sort of the market standard. You don't have to like it, but that's just where games are now, so that's that. Then they have the gold edition for $110 plus, potentially more. And that basically comes with the season pass. Okay, some more DLC and the pre-order bonus. Cool. Then they have the ultimate edition. Bear in mind, this doesn't come with physical stuff. This is all digital. It is $130, comes with a season pass, a digital art book, a pre-order bonus, and then the ultimate pack, which is up here and is basically like a couple of skins. It has the Serentu Heritage Cosmetic Pack and the Hunter Equipment Pack, which comes with one unique weapon and character gear set. So it seems to be very, very similar to what they've done with
Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
So this isn't anything shocking for Ubisoft, but it is once again just an affirmation that they're doing the same old stuff. And listen, my perspective on this Ubisoft thing is that while they certainly have earned the negative reputation they have, and while I have been at the forefront of calling some of their most recent games utter travesties of open world design, I have seen behind closed doors and in public presentations that Ubisoft is taking steps to try and remedy that and to change how they do that moving forward. To me, from what I've seen and heard and inferred, blah, 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 you know, I can't go into too much detail, but from what I've seen and heard, it seems as though Ubisoft is taking a heck of a lot more time to polish these projects. They're equipping their studios with more staff and more time. They're giving everybody the tools to make this work and to pull off the best game they can make. Now, is Ubisoft massive? Are they capable of creating a 10 out of 10 Game of the Year contender? I have no reason to believe that, but I do think they're capable of making pretty good games or even really good games. And so at this point, I understand the negativity surrounding Ubisoft, but I would not count them out. It does seem as though they have been changing things for the last 3 to 4 years in their overall approach to these massive titles. And proof positive of that is the fact that we haven't had an Assassin's Creed game since 2020, when Assassin's Creed Valhalla launched. I mean, there was a period for years and years and years where Ubisoft was dropping an Assassin's Creed game every year, and sometimes they dropped 2 in a year. You guys remember the whole crap with like Assassin's Creed Rogue and then Assassin's Creed Unity launching basically at the same time because they were trying to capture last gen players and next gen players, and it just created a disaster? That's where Ubisoft was just a few short years ago, but they're not doing that anymore. Now their approach is to really take their time, and it might be something they move forward with. In the long term, it might be that it's just how the schedule broke out. I'm not sure, but either way, let's just appreciate that it seems as though something is changing. Maybe it'll be way, way worse and really funny. Or maybe it actually is going to lead to semi-decent games or pretty good games coming out consistently. I would like more good games to play myself, so I'm going to root for them to figure it out, but I will be here laughing if they blow it once again, for sure. I mean, again, it's like people think that YouTubers just like bashing on games and hating on them for no reason. Like, no, I would love for Ubisoft to pull off Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora, and to pull off Assassin's Creed Mirage, and to pull off Star Wars Outlaws. I would love for them to hit all of these out of the park and for them all to be 10 out of 10s. I don't know if they will be, and some of them will probably be pretty good. Others will be terrible, I'm sure, but I would like more good games to play. Like, of course I would. I'm a gamer. I want more good stuff to play. But if it looks like crap, I'm going to tell you it looks like crap. So, yeah. But to wrap all of this up, it seems like most people's concerns for this game are that, one, it's coming from Ubisoft, which I think is totally fair. Two, it looks like it's basically just a really big reskin of Far Cry, which I think if you don't like Far Cry is also totally fair. If you're not into Far Cry, you're probably not going to like this game. But there are millions and millions of players who hear open world Far Cry with an avatar coat of paint and get really, really excited. It might not be for you, it might not be for me, but there are a lot of people for whom this is right up their alley. But for me personally, if I had to summarize my overarching opinion on all of this, I would say that at this point, I don't think there is warrant for being really excited or hyped for this title at this point. Coming from a studio without a ton of experience making games like this, from a publisher that has a history of really shoddy work that's very, very inconsistent, to say the very least. The fact that the gameplay seems to basically just be a carbon copy of another franchise that a lot of people feel is really stale and stagnant. And perhaps one of the biggest concerns that we haven't really touched on is that this game has been delayed a lot. Some people could see that as a net positive, that it's been delayed to get polished and refined and improved. Other people, like myself, look at it as maybe a sign that there are troubles brewing underneath the surface, because this game was initially scheduled to launch with Avatar 2, basically, just last year, and they delayed it outside of that release window for no reason that they've announced other than they wanted to polish it more. And as I've said for a long time, if they were going to delay it outside of that window when excitement and hype for that film was at its absolute peak, there was something seriously wrong that they needed to fix, that they couldn't justify releasing a shoddy product or an even iffy or mediocre product. There was something seriously wrong. And maybe one day we'll find out what that was, but delaying it outside of that launch window for that film was a big, big deal. And that to me gets me even more concerned and suspicious. But hopefully, again, hopefully, they've fixed it by now. Whatever problems were there, they've addressed. And now they just are sitting on a really, really solid game that's going to excite a ton of people. I would love for this to be the first just ball hit out of the park from Ubisoft in a handful of years. I think that would be awesome. I would love for there to be more studios hitting balls out of the park, but you know what? Time will tell. As always, save your money. Don't pre-order a $130 version of a game that we barely know anything about. Wait patiently for reviews, or at least until we know more. And of course, if you want to hear my thoughts on the game, and especially as we get into the season of game previews and behind closed door access for media, make sure to subscribe, ring the little notification bell, like the video, blah, 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 or don't. I can't tell if you do or don't, so do whatever you want. I'm just glad you watched the video, so I'll just count that as a win. But that's gonna do it for me. Let me know what you think of Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. Are you intrigued? Are you excited? Or is this just a nothing burger that's dead on arrival for you? I'm interested in hearing your thoughts down in the comments. I think everybody is pretty much justified in whatever position they take. If they're really, really excited at the idea of an open world Avatar game, I get it. But if they also look at this and are like, Far Cry with Smurfs, I'm good. I also totally get that. But with that, I'm gonna go eat dinner with my wife, my older son, and then my new son, who's only 2 weeks old. Thank you for making all of this a reality, allowing me to provide for my wife and my kids. I'm humbled every day by it. It's just baffling that I get to do this with my life. So truly, truly, thank you. But until next time, hugs and kisses. I love you very much. Bye-bye.